the trouble that I have in my life, my fear, my imbalance, my miseries and problems, they all come out in my life and how I handle myself. And so I just look at, if I'm not in a conscious, loving relationship with God, then how can I walk out into the world and share this mission effectively? So those are my troubles for the last few weeks, but I still seem to focus on looking good and being stable and living a comfortable life, and want it to be something that I'm not. So I do see that it starts with that God relationship first before I get to even look at any of those qualities. But it was a fun exploration. So I don't often act like I'm a devotee. So yeah, it goes back to like what we hear all the time, repeatedly in the Vedas, is like we're acting like animals, eat, sleep, mate, defend, and then that doesn't look so much like walk, talk, and act like a devotee, a human. We're not using our human purpose. So that progress is slow for me, and my old habits creep back in, but less and less. So I'll stop there with that. So the faith, I in doing this sort of self-study on speaking is I go back to faith, and this word is big for me because it's like it was my first step to like have faith. And according to the Vedas, it kind of goes hand in hand with inquisitiveness, but I don't have that. I have no inquisitiveness. I just have faith. I just see it. I see what gets exhibited in our community and through Sattva and through our programs. And I see who Prabhupada is, and I see the effect that the classes have on my personal life and my choices. And so I have faith. I don't have a lot of questions about it, because to me, it just seems like this works. I don't need to ask questions. So looking at that is kind of scary, because I don't know why I don't have questions. And I've got some more digging to do there. It's the attraction that I have to people that do have faith and do ask questions is there. So after faith, I kind of goes to association, like am deciding who I spend my time with. I used to say this a lot to my team at work about, you are the sum total of the 10 people that you spend the most time with, because everyone always had personal problems, and then they would do these crazy things. And I would say, well, what did you expect from that person or that situation? You keep going back there. And then of course I'm the pot calling the kettle black kind of thing. But in this situation, I can relate to it here, because most of my association now is with devotees, is with Sattva devotees. And it is, it's such a highlight of my life, and such a special realization for me to really embrace what I was talking about for so long with my work team, and not living it. And now that I've got the space and time to live it, I see how effective it is, attending programs and, preparing prasadam for our gatherings, and playing music and kirtans, and learning instruments, and reading Prabhupada's books, and taking more seminars and more coaching, and endlessly listening to what's going on in our Krishna community. I find myself wanting to have those serious qualities of a serious devotee, like it's some kind of serious thing. And then I have to relax and go, it doesn't have to be so seriously. Like, this is a beautiful thing that doesn't have to be taken so seriously and so like fearfully. So I guess I've spent a lot of time in programs, in seminars, in coaching, hoping that some of the good qualities and symptoms that everyone has rubs off on me, or I'm around it so much that it starts to become natural for me too. So, choosing to show up for me was not difficult. I mean, to show up fully and speak, yes, that's challenging. But to show up, to get up in the morning and go to a program, or attend a program, or sign up for an advanced course, or sit in front of David and Marie and whine about my life, like I could show up. And so that was part of my life. Well, at least I could do that, because I have so many friends who I want to show up, or who cry to me and say they want to show up, but they can't show up. So I get to like rest on that a little bit and say, okay, well, at least I show up. And the rest I'm kind of like, well, now what do I do with that? So learning to imbibe these qualities is like I haven't been as assertive as I want to be. I want to say that like I had no desire to know God or even any kind of God stuff. I had a very spiritual grandmother, but the rest of my family, my parents and everybody else that I was around didn't practice anything. We went to church sometimes on Sunday, but it was Baptist church, and just kind of you go there and sit down and blah 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 and go home. There was no talk of God in our house, no pictures of God, no discussion. But I had this grandmother who was pretty sentimental with God, and she was super involved in the church. So I stayed with her a lot because I had problems with my mom, and she would take me to everything. We went to concerts and camp and Sunday night cooking class and all of it, everything we could do. She gave me all the books and magazines and drug me all over the place to see things and do things. And I couldn't handle it. I thought she was crazy, and I thought she was pushy, and I never accepted and never gave her the gratification of experiencing that with her. So I'm pretty sure she would be surprised to hear me leading this class right now. But when I got introduced to Prabhupada, I could look and see that was so attractive. And the way he walked and talked and acted, I could just feel that there was a place for me in there where I didn't feel that with my grandmother. Not that she was a hypocrite, she was a pretty strong Christian, but it just didn't fit right, didn't fit me. I don't know, it seemed judgmental or something to me as a child, and even as a young adult. She died when I was in my 30s, so I had her in my life for a long time, and she tried until the end to get me to come around, and I couldn't. I chose not to. So watching a lot of videos of Prabhupada has been such a big deal for me. I watched a few last night, just trying to like absorb his qualities, like what are they that make him so attractive? And so it's just so beautiful. And so hours of doing that, I ran across last night, before I went to bed, I just wanted to be absorbed, and I watched some of the memories of Prabhupada where some of the older devotees talk about their experience with him. And I went back to what I said earlier about, well, what is it that other people experience of a devotee? What, like, not what we think ourselves about ourselves, or what we know we're doing or saying, but like how are we seen by other people? I think that's what Arjuna is asking Krishna in this verse. It's like, well, it's not a personal selfish thing. It's more like in general, like how do we know when we see one, and what do those qualities look like? And really, you can just see them so purely with observing Prabhupada in this video. So thankfully those are around for us. I think what I like most about in those videos is I sense his decisiveness, like his just on point purity, dedication, and how much his followers adore him. It's so beautiful to watch their smiles and their faces, the sincerity and the honesty there. I know that I'm doing the same thing with those videos. I hope some rubs off on me or sticks with me, and I'm pretty sure some of it has, but I got a long way to go. So I was looking around in some other verses to see if there were places where it specifically talked about like what are the symptoms of a devotee and what are the qualities of a devotee, and specifically the reference to speech and talking, because that's what I drew out of this verse. That's what triggered me, is like that whole part about, well, if you don't speak up, then what does that mean? So in the Srimad Bhagavatam 6.10.10 purport, I'm just going to read it to you guys. It's the duty of every living being to perform welfare activities for the benefit of others with his life, wealth, intelligence, and words. This is the mission of life. One's own body and the bodies of his friends and relatives, as well as one's own riches and everything else one has, should be engaged for the benefit of others. This is the mission of Lord Chaitanya. So there's the word words is in here, but also it's just about engaging. Like, this isn't about me. This is about engaging for the benefit of others. And to me, that's walking and talking and acting and speech. And then there's another purport that's very similar. 8:14-5 is another purport that says, this is the process of disciplic succession. Following the same process, the Krishna consciousness movement is teaching the principles of Bhagavad-gita as it is without deviation all over the world. If the fortunate people of this time accept the instructions of Lord Krishna, they will certainly be happy in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted everyone, at least in India, to become a preacher of this mission. In other words, one should become a guru and preach the Lord's instructions all over the world for peace and prosperity of humanity. And this doesn't use the word speech, but it talks a lot about that's our goal. We go preach, and to preach, we've got to have a strong connection, a strong practice, and be well versed in these verses, and be able to articulate what we're trying to communicate. And I'm so far from that. It's scary, but they both, because speaking is what this verse and this lesson is about. It's like my biggest fear to have to speak here, even with you guys. I'm pretty relaxed and comfortable because I know all you guys, but at the same time, I so fear that I'm not accurate on something or getting too wordy or repeating myself. I'm going to go to one other verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 16:8 purport. This is when I think I've heard this verse before, but when I was looking up some things and kind of studying this whole thing about my speech, this was like where I could just let go and go, whew, okay, I can do this. So I'm going to read the verse to you. Although Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees in disciplic succession can defeat all kinds of learned scholars, scientists, and philosophers in arguments, thus establishing the supremacy of the personality of Godhead, their main business as a preacher is to introduce Sankirtan everywhere. Simply to defeat scholars and philosophers is not the occupation of a preacher. Preachers must simultaneously introduce the Sankirtan movement, for that is the mission of Lord Chaitanya. So I'll repeat this sentence. Simply to defeat scholars and philosophers is not the occupation. When we speak, it's not to be philosophical in a way that I'm never going to be. It is, this whole Sankirtan is such a relief to me because I really enjoy that and I feel comfortable for the most part, and I get more and more comfortable with practice. Singing, playing instruments, sharing large groups of people participating in kirtan. It's not so much about the speech because I'm not a scholar. I'm a gradual learner. I'm a slow learner. I can talk about this subject, and I can exhibit my softening heart, and I can accept my gradualness, but I can't jump to the finish line. I can't be a pure devotee just because I want to. I guess I could, but it's not in me right now, not in this lifetime. I get to enjoy the purification process, and the process is so beautiful. And just look, I'm manifesting this whole experience here in Prabhupada House. Is just like, I can't even tell you how it's just heightened everything in my life, being in this beautiful space with other devotees, enjoying this process here. I'm not fully surrendered, but it's much easier to look at surrendering here than it is somewhere else. There's another word here, the seriousness that kind of struck me, is like, how serious am I? How serious can I be? And in order to imbibe those qualities, those symptoms, it's going to require some seriousness. And I'm like, do I have that? Can I be this serious about this subject? Because I know how to be serious when it comes to work. And so I assume that same seriousness can apply to other subjects. But I just remember, like, never ever wanting to be late for work and never wanting to leave things undone at work, and pushing myself physically to limits that I can't even believe my body cooperated. I'm feeling it for certain these days, but it's 12, 14, 18-hour days, 7 days a week for months on end, just pushing and inside of me feeling that push of like, you have to do this. So there was no out, there was no forgiveness or settling. And so I was very serious about profit. I was very serious about success and reputation and fame and money. And so I just did it. And so I'm like, well, I've got that quality. Okay, so what's the problem with applying it to Krishna consciousness? I don't understand why it doesn't just leap over into this other category. And I feel sad that I haven't yet been able to do that. And so that's a realization that I had this week. It's just like, what does that mean, Leah? What are you what are you waiting for? I don't know what I can say about that, except that it's embarrassing and sad. Another question that comes up when I think about that is patience. Like, I'm generally an impatient person, but I've definitely gotten more patient in this consciousness from reading and sharing and being with all you guys. And I very seldom give up on myself, even though it's hard and I feel crazy or tired or exhausted or unsure or ignorant, all kind of things. I still get up and go at it again. And so I don't have a lot of days where it feels like giving up or just an I can't. So I know that being in this association and going through this process has been good to me. And then another question I ask myself a lot is when I'm stuck in a situation and not sure what to do, I'll ask myself, I'll kind of visualize Prabhupada and I'll kind of say, well, what, I've watched enough hundreds of hours of videos to know, like, what I'm not professing to know Prabhupada that well, but enough to go, what might he do in this situation? And I think about it, and I can kind of go there, and then I do something different. And so I look at all the advice and service from these books behind me, and so much available online, and so many people here to support me. And I mean, I'm so glad that we have all that, because without that, I can't imagine where I would be, who would be guiding me, or who would be my role model. No one, some media or something. I can compare how I walked and talked and speak and act before to now, and there's some progress. But devotion was not even a word I probably ever even used, unless it was to work. So I'm gonna share a conversation with you I had with daughter, because I think this was like 3 or 4 years ago, and it kind of relates to this verse. I was thinking about this verse and just really meditating on it for the last few weeks, and this conversation popped up in my mind as one of the reasons I'm here, and wondering why he had that conversation with me. No, he must have known where my mind was. But I was at the retreat center finishing my first advanced course, and I walked out on the sidewalk, and Donna was walking in as I was walking out, and it must have been Stretch Day, or it was the end of something, and he was asking me how things went. And he just kind of pulled me aside and had a personal conversation, face to face, eye to eye. And he really wanted to let me know something really important that stuck with me, that so much so that I've remembered it all these years later, and I'm sharing it with you. He just wanted me to let me know that Marie and David were honest, real people, and that no matter what I decided to do or how far I decided to go with these courses or Krishna consciousness or whatever, that they would be the same people inside the course and outside the course room, and that I was in good hands, and that I could trust them, and that this wasn't just a scene that you kind of go and then you're going to need something later and they're not available. And so he really wanted me to know about their sincerity. And so he shared, 5 or 10 minutes with me talking about it. And I guess I may have been even looking like, well, how real is this in the real world? Or how am I going to apply this? Or, yeah, this is great in the classroom. He must have sent something like that. Or maybe he says this to everybody. I don't know. But he just kind of reassured me that I was in good hands, and that these people in this class and these teachers would accept me no matter where I was at in my life. And this was a really unusual feeling for me to say. Really, I'd never met anybody like that. I didn't know what it was like. I got a taste of true integrity, and I wanted more. So I went to the program the next day, and then I kept going, and here we are. But I just really appreciated that I was getting to hang out with people even though it was hard and, parts of it were miserable, it's like, it was a better me than I'd ever seen before. And I had role models to look to for developing my own symptoms. So I took that conversation to heart. And then what's happened over these last 3 years is that since that conversation is that I've developed my Krishna consciousness. Most of you know, I just got initiated, and I endeavor to take each day seriously in my practice and to do the work that is required of me to embrace this commitment wholeheartedly. I don't know that I can do that all day, every day, but I'm so proud of myself for what I have done, and I'll just focus on that rather than go on to what I haven't done. But I've noticed that I've always been I host a lot of people at my house, like 6, 8, 10, sometimes a day, coming and going from my Airbnb business, and I have spent a lot less time with them lately because I'm out here at Prabhupada's house. So it's been more of a check in and out hotel situation, and a lot of texting and stuff, and not so much face-to-face time. But one of the commitments I made in the 5 Principles course that I was just speaking of was to since I'm not with them physically anymore, to have those conversations. I have all of the books there, and the Prabhupada's picture, and lots of things everywhere to see if anyone's interested. I can sense it, and to try to have conversations with them. I used to be there with them, and I could share with them, and it was so I don't know, so gratifying and just so beautiful to watch people coming and not even knowing what they need, and just surrendering to picking up a Bhagavad-gita or sharing a verse with me or doing a kirtan with me or whatever. And definitely eating prasadam. That now I'm over here, it's more difficult. So I was losing that interest in that. And then in the course, I made a commitment to engage with them, since I wasn't with them physically, to engage with them more effectively by the messenger that we use for that platform, to really like be as with them as someone can in a message. And I engaged that fully, and I got some accountability partners and worked on it. And I can say that it's a pretty beautiful outcome. It's not exactly the same, but I get a lot of messages that people recognize that someone's seeing them and hearing them. And so this is encouraging that I don't have to be an orator of extensive Vedic knowledge just to have an impact on someone, or just to share my God consciousness with someone, or give them a book or a bookmark, or fix them a meal, or just give them space to chat, that they need it so much, just like I did. So I get to be that role model, or that sort of receptive person for them. And people have life-changing, it's just amazing. They just need a little space. And so I've really just like been able to, I take that to the Airbnb business very, very wholeheartedly. But I also, I was in an Uber the other day. I'm having some work done on my car again, and I was getting an Uber back home, and the Uber driver was just, it's 2 people in a car. So, I lead the conversation where it goes, and people are receptive, and I get so much gratification and love out of those one-on-one conversations, because I don't have to get very technical, and it allows me to be more of where I'm at in the conversation. And I used to hate when people did that to me, cornered me in a car and started talking about God, but I don't care what they think anymore. So I'm going to go back to the verse for a second, and that line that said, "As soon as I speak, I reveal myself at once." So I'm just feeling that right now as I'm speaking to you guys. I'm revealing myself. This makes me nervous, and I'm feeling okay, courageous today, but I don't have anything earth-shattering or super inspiring. But I'm just sharing what's going on with me in this verse, and how one little verse, it's only a couple of sentences, can rock my world. And had I not signed up for that class, and then the funny thing was that the day I sent message that I wanted to share in class, and that I was making myself accountable to him, or him accountable to me, and we were I needed to write it down and send it because I know if I say something to him that I would follow through. And then I shared, and then as soon as I committed to doing that, I opened to do my Bhagavad-gita study questions, and the next verse was this one. So that's how this ended up on the agenda today, is like, well, we're talking about speech. I'm talking about my fear of speech, and here's this verse to remind me. That happens to me so much. It's like, I always feel like that's my super soul. That's God talking to me saying, okay, let's look at this right now. Just don't push it under, just go for it. So I am enjoying this process of coming out of my shell. But the Sankirtan stuff since it doesn't require me to think deeply about what I'm going to say, and I kind of like, I'll embrace that a little more. But it's not about my opinion or my vocabulary. I'm just doing Sankirtan, so I like that. I look at what Chaitanya did 100 years ago, and what Prabhupada did in the 60s and 70s. It's like, that's what they did. That's what moved people. So I kind of look at upping my commitment to that, because that's easy. It's not speaking so much, but it's speaking God's names, but it's not so difficult. Okay. One of the realizations that I had about speaking was that the speaking with confidence comes when we know something, when we really know. And like, I feel like I really know some things about God and Prabhupada and Krishna consciousness, but not to the extent that I'm so confident that I can just go for it. And so I was thinking about, like, if you ask me other questions about things I do know, like catering and cooking for large groups of people, and camping in the woods and stuff like that, I can go on for hours, and it's probably nonsense talk, but at least I go, well, I don't need to go look in a book or feel nervous. I just go, it just comes out. And I think I want that in my spiritual life, but I don't have that now. And it causes sort of a hesitation and a fear. And that transcendental level stuff is not easy for me. So I stick with, well, let me just spend some time talking about material stuff, because then I can look good or feel confident, and I need that fix or whatever. So I'm looking at that as well. I have another Bhagavad-gita verse here, 12, 18, 19. I'm going to read to you the translation. One who is equal to friends and enemies, whose equipoise in honor and dishonor, heat and cold, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, who's always free from contaminating association, always silent and satisfied with anything, who doesn't care for any residence, who's fixed in knowledge, who is engaged in devotional service. Such a person is very dear to me. In the purport, a devotee is always free from all bad association. Sometimes one is praised and sometimes one is defamed. That's the nature of human society. But a devotee is always transcendental to artificial fame and infamy, distress, happiness. He's very patient. He doesn't speak of anything but the topics about Krishna, and therefore he's called silent. Silent doesn't mean that one should not speak. Silent means that one should not speak nonsense. One should speak only of essentials, and the most essential speech for the devotee is to speak for the sake of the Supreme Lord. The devotee is happy in all conditions. Sometimes he may get very palatable foodstuffs, and sometimes not, but he's satisfied. Nor does he care for any residential facility. He may sometimes live underneath a tree and sometimes live in a very palatial building. He's attracted to neither. He's called fixed because he's fixed in his determination and knowledge. We may find some repetition in the descriptions of the qualifications of a devotee, but this is just to emphasize the fact that a devotee must acquire all these qualifications. Without good qualifications, one cannot be a pure devotee. One who is not a devotee has no good qualifications. One who wants to be recognized as a devotee should develop the good qualifications. Of course, he does not extraneously endeavor to acquire these qualifications, but engagement in Krishna consciousness and devotional service automatically helps. That's what we were just talking about. So I was thinking about that before I found this verse, and I like how it matched up. That there's a lot of qualities listed here, like happiness in all conditions, fixed and determination. So I have another verse on 520, and in 520 in the Bhagavad-gita, Prabhupada in the translation, it says that a devotee knows the science of God. And then Prabhupada's purport, he talks about that we're not illusioned by false identification of the body. So that's the main thing that we're supposed to know. We know it, but we don't know it. He knows if we're fixed, then we know that we're not fragments of, that we are not this body. And so it's, if we know this, then we would behave differently. So we don't really know it. We just talk about know it, or I do. I'm speaking for myself. And the purport also says he's not joyful in achieving something, nor does he lament when he loses something. He has a steady mind. So I'm just reading through some of these qualities. He's steady consciousness. So these qualities are pretty hefty. I'm going to go to 518, the equal vision verse, and say that Prabhupada talks about being detached from the bodily concept again, and that in that way we're not. We can see the differences in all the spirit soul bodies, that they're all part of God, and we don't treat people differently. We see them all equally, and I think, I mean, you can certainly see that in Prabhupada, watching him with all the different types of people he interacted with, and then that lack of judgment, and like really, from animals to humans, all of them being equal. That's a big one for me. This verse had a big impact on me. And the next verse, 521, also says that, and I'm just going to skip through the purport, that a liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure or external objects. It's always in a trance. So there's that word trance again. So we're enjoying sort of an internal pleasure versus the external pleasure. So that's how we can, I'm going to sum up there. That's how we can sit and talk and walk. We can be connected to Krishna. That's pretty much all it requires, is we get connected, and we get God conscious. And then, of course, that's what we're going to talk about. Of course, we're going to walk that way and talk that way. So I'll end with kind of saying that this is a really nice verse to end the year with. When I picked this date, I wasn't really thinking about that, but then as we close the year, I'm like, well, tomorrow's January 1st, and that's when I do, and most of us do, kind of assess last year and make some goals and plans for next year and things we want to do better or differently. And so this verse kind of feels like a good way to take a look at that. It's like, what are the symptoms that I want to exhibit and take on, and what are the ones that I don't want, that I want to drop and leave back in 2020 as we write our New Year's resolutions. We're going into a new decade, and so I'm going to summarize these sort of qualities that I've been talking about in this class. We can evoke a steady mind, a steady consciousness. We can detach from the bodily concept. We can have equal vision for all beings. These are good New Year's resolutions. We can embrace the science of God. We can be happy no matter what the condition. We can speak less about nonsense. We can be patient. We can perform actions for the welfare of others over ourselves. We can stay engaged in devotional service. We can be in Sankirtan everywhere we go. We get to be conscious of how we walk and talk and act, because we've just talked about it. And so it's fresh on our mind as we start the new year tomorrow. We also have so many excellent role models in our community and outside our community too. And we can be excellent role models for all the people that are in our lives, that are in the Uber driver or the Airbnb guest or the clerk at Publix. So there you go for some goal setting for 2021. So I'm going to close there. I've got one more thing. When I was putting this lesson together, I do this a lot and it works for me. And so today I was just like, well, I'm just going to try and see if it works today. So Rama gave me a card the other night when he was here for the Christmas service, Enlightenment, or one of the programs. I think it was Enlightenment, I'm not sure. He gave me a Gita card. I pulled a card and I set some intention to pull a card that really affects. I wanted it to be an effective card, and I wanted to take it to heart and really look at it about my nature. And so I evoked some auspicious thoughts in my mind, and I pulled the card, and I read the card. It triggered me. And when I went to bed that night, most nights listen to a lecture right before I go to sleep to get my mind settled. And So I just randomly pull up a lecture by Prabhupada, and I didn't pick the title. I didn't look for it, but it happened to be the same verse that I pulled out of the cards. And I thought, well, God, that's really God speaking to me about this subject. I really need to look at this. And it wasn't this subject we're talking about today. It was a whole nother one. I won't go there. So I went to bed with that on my mind. It was heavy. And I woke up and I was getting ready. I put on another lecture to listen to as I was getting ready for the day. And there was that verse again, completely different video. And so I got 3 doses of that, 3 doses of some pretty straightforward advice giving from Krishna. And so when things like that happen to me, I can't say I always just heed the advice, but I sit on it and think about it. I'm slow to act on it, but it's up on the conscious level. So today, when I was preparing for this class yesterday and putting this together, I came down this morning to the temple ring where I'm at now, and I just said, well, I'm going to just reach up into the Chaitanya Charitamrita and pull a book down, and I'm going to open a random page, and I'm going to see if there's a message about speaking and talking and acting and walking, and maybe I'll get a clear message from Krishna that I'm okay. I can talk about this, that this is just a thing, you know? So I just pulled out right up there. I just pulled this random. This is Madhya Volume 4. And I opened to this random page, and there it was. So I'm going to read it to you, and then I'll stop. This is Madhya chapter 11, text 29-30. And I'm going to just read the translation. My devotees take great care and respect in rendering me service. They offer obeisance to me with all their bodily limbs. They worship my devotees and find all living entities related to me. For me, they engage the entire energy of their bodies. They engage the power of speech and glorification of my qualities and form. They also dedicate their minds to me and try to give up all kinds of material desires. Thus, my devotees are characterized. And so there we go. You see how that works? You just grab a book any old where and it just fits. So that's the end of my lesson. I'm open to any comments or feedback or questions.
Hi, it's Kim. Can you hear me? Thank you for the class. I found it very sweet. It was a very warm-hearted class, very nice. One thing you said resonated with me, and a lot of things, but when you were saying how come you could work like 16 hours a day when you were working for weeks on end, and then it's so hard in spiritual service. And I totally resonate with that. And I think that too. And really, I guess I know the answer too at the same time. You know, there's some kind of accountability that's in, work. It's so accountable. I mean, if you don't show up, there's so many people will be on the phone in a half hour and say, why aren't you showing up? So I think that's the problem. And even though through karma, we have accountability, totally, it's harder to see it and slower, maybe sometimes slower. So anyway, I just resonated with that. And I know for my own self, I work with that. It's like, in spiritual life, I don't put myself in places where I am accountable. And that's, something I really have to look at. So it just made me think of all that when you were saying that. And I just want to thank you for the whole talk and for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. So we're capable of doing it if we have accountability sources and we put it out there. I guess like I did with David about the sharing, I just sent an email, and then I sent that same email to several people, so I would be sure not to back out. But work
Right.
easier to find it. Well, I don't know. I guess it goes to looking good. We're looking good. We don't want to be the one that's late or doesn't do our job or even we could lose our job because of it. So I guess there's a different kind of material satisfaction more with work than there is with spiritual stuff. And then that satisfaction, you would think that we would be more satisfied with pleasing God than our boss, but that's a good place to investigate.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I appreciate the conversation. That part of your class also stood out to me, the determination part, and that, yeah, it really points to this whole process of Krishna consciousness. It's transforming the direction of our enthusiasm. And so, yeah, I've got lots of enthusiasm for eating, sleeping, for people adoring me and looking good. And I got lots. I'm willing to work 18 hours per day, or to sleep 10 hours a day. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, that's where my enthusiasm is. And then it's like, oh, love of God. Yeah, okay, I guess I should. Yeah. And then in the whole process, then the whole process is that gradually, for pretty much all of us, it's gradually, then more and more, it's like, hey, I have enthusiasm to serve Prabhupada's mission. And then more and more, even without the structures, just, yeah, this is really what I'm inspired to do with my time and life energy, to serve Prabhupada's mission, to chant the names of Krishna. And so then until that, as we're developing that inspiration, and in those stages where our enthusiasm is more towards profit and getting adored and distinction and looking good and being right and all that, then that's where, sometimes I use the term healthy peer pressure, right? Like, that's why I like Prabhupada set up ashram structures, and like, okay, if we're in the ashram, well, I'm not enthusiastic to get up at 4 a.m. and go to Mangalarti, but everyone's doing it, and it won't look good if I don't. So it can be a sort of healthy peer pressure. And so like that, we associate with a community to hold us accountable for spiritual goals, spiritual practices. So yeah, that's the whole process. That conditioned life means, yeah, I'm enthusiastic about eating, sleeping, and sex life. That's material life, and then it's about transferring the direction of our heart's inspiration, and it's a gradual process for most of us. And I really appreciated, Laksmipriya, your choice of this verse. Yeah, whatever. I don't know. In 40 years, I don't think I've ever given a verse on this, a class on this verse, or heard anyone else do it. So I'm really moved by where you're attracted, and yeah, and the whole thing about qualities. I feel deepened in my attraction and appreciation for Prabhupada's distinctive qualities. I really liked how you talked about it. He's so tall, even though he's not tall from one point of view. He's just so tall, and that's just like, yeah, just watching him on the video, hearing him speak. And so this verse related to Prabhupada as the archetype epitome of Vaishnav speaking, walking, sitting. So many would say just watching Prabhupada drink water, just whatever he does, he's just like, wow, this is a pure Vaishnav. And we might not even know why, but we're transformed. And yeah, and just as reference, I appreciated you read from chapter 12, chapter 12 Bhagavad-gita, text 13 to 20. Krishna gives a list of qualities of the Vaishnav that make one very dear to him. Chapter 13 Bhagavad-gita, text 8 to 12, Krishna gives really the symptoms of one who's absorbed in transcendental knowledge. That's a list of about 19, 20 qualities of a Vaishnav. Chapter 16, chapter 16 is entitled Divine and Demoniac Natures. And mostly it's about demoniac natures. But the first 3 verses of chapter 16, Krishna lists qualities of the soft-hearted full-time devotees. And I really appreciated your references from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita in in Lord Chaitanya's teachings to Sanatana Goswami, Chaitanya Charitamrita, towards the end of Madhya Lila, there's a series of, there's a series of 3 verses, and it lists 26 qualities of the Vaishnav. It's something to reference if someone's interested to absorb in qualities of a Vaishnav and how they're defined in the literatures Prabhupada gave us. It's the 26 qualities of a Vaishnav in Lord Chaitanya's teachings to Sanatana Goswami. It includes Mauna, just like you were describing in your class. Mauna means silent, which doesn't mean one doesn't speak. It means one doesn't speak nonsense. Mauna. And Gambira means grave and compassionate. A beautiful description. One other reference I'll mention is in the Nectar of Devotion, there's a description of 64 qualities of Krishna. And the first 50 qualities are also qualities of the devotee. Of course, Krishna has them in infinite quantity. And so we can have them to the extent that a jiva can have them. So I'm just following up on the whole topic of qualities of a devotee, and I love that you speak about that, because so much of the teachings, the verses, the Shastra is about the qualities of devotees. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, it seems like if we don't have accountability and association, like they're just a list on a page, like we can put them up here on the wall and go, these are all the things that we can obtain from watching Prabhupada, but like to be in where we're at in Florida, and to be like around it, like it, otherwise it's just theoretical to me. It like I needed, and I think we all are here for the same reason, I would assume, is like we get to see what it looks like from each other, and we get to hold each other accountable. Like, and we know what that means, and we're not afraid to ask for it or share with each other or give honest feedback because of Sattva. And so we get a boost, because I can just see myself reading this out of context of that and like saying, well, this all sounds nice, patience and everything. I'll just put a sticker on my fridge or something and kind of hope that rubs off. But if I don't have someone saying, hey, you're not being patient, or someone else showing them what real patience looks like in the line of fire, then I'm probably not gonna, not that even that's gonna stick on me, but it's at least there's more of a proclivity for me to kind of get some of it, because it's real. It's not, and I just really like appreciate our community so much. Is I'm listening to you talk, David, and I'm just like thinking like, who else? I just go outside of this little world that we're in and go out to my other relationships and the non-devotees, and I just see that they don't have that, they don't experience that, and don't know what that looks and feels like. So the chances of them being able to improve their life and obtain some of these qualities is so limited. And I guess that leads me to a question, believe it or not. It's like there's so much talk in the Vedas about spending time with non-devotees. Like, can you say more about that? I almost did. I was thought about putting it in my talk, and then I was like, well, I don't really know much about that. But there's so many of my relationships outside of this community are non-devotees, and I spend less and less time with them. But there's some good people out there that I've had long-term relationships with that I still love and care for, but they're not in any kind of God relationship at all, not just Krishna, but not any. And so what is it? There's so many places where it says that's not good for us. Will you say a little bit about that and like maybe elaborate, since I'm kind of stumbling?
Well, thanks for sharing. Well, one thing is what you express, Laksmipriya, reminds me of there's a whole science of relationship, and it's vast, and courses could be and have been taught on the science of relationship for persons dedicated to self-realization. Goswami talks about dadati pratigrinami guyamakiti prichati, just like what you're like creating safe spaces to reveal the heart confidentially, to ask confidentially, give and receive honest feedback. And so the idea of, associate non-devotee, this whole thing of non-devotees, devotees, that's a continuum. That's a continuum. So, for example, I know, like if I'm standing in front of a group of dozens of people at the beginning of a Safito foundational seminar, and most of them, I don't know who they are before 9 a.m. on Friday morning. And I don't know, at the same time, I'm regarding, like, I'm inspired by this association. These are people who are inspired about knowing themselves, distinguishing reality from illusion, courageously looking in. And there's other times there might be, if I look over the decades, maybe people who are chanting rounds and getting up. But my experience, my subjective experience, is like, I experience them as not really in a spirit of discovery and kind of stagnant and going through the motions. So they might carry a card that says devotee, but for me, it's not inspiring devotional association. And Srila Prabhupada, he encourages so much devotee association. At the same time, he often uses the term like-minded devotee association. So this is an important distinction. It's not like for us to be judging, to feel superior, but for us to be conscious that we create boundaries and give and receive association in a way that's just win-win for everyone. And so, so the idea is that we're using our intelligence, guided by Shastra, guided by higher intelligence, so that whatever association we're doing, that it's really uplifting, expanding Krishna consciousness. Or Krishna consciousness could be wrongly perceived as a sectarian term, but still, it's moving people to turn towards themselves in a spirit of discovery, which is essentially what Bhagavad-gita chapter 2 is about. So yeah, whether you're going to some family members who apparently have no interest in any self-realization or spiritual life, or we're going to the post office or the market or whatever, that our association, there's always going to be osmosis. And so that's really a principle of this morning program. We fill ourselves up with a spiritual vibration, spiritual consciousness, so that wherever we go in our work day, and it might just be through our silence. It might be through sharing some philosophy. It might be through saying good morning, but it's the vibration that wherever we go, we're givers. We're giving spiritual life, Krishna consciousness in some way. So it's not like an external superfluous thing that we're supposed to cloister ourselves and lock ourselves in our homes and not go here or there, because we can see, like Srila Prabhupada, he left Vrindavan and came to where there are no devotees, so to speak. But Prabhupada saw no, everyone in New York is a devotee, right? And he had the Shakti that wherever he went, he would expand Krishna consciousness. He would make a temple in their heart. So we don't want to imitate that, but the principle is that, yeah, we want to be conscious, careful about is this association that's going to bring me down? Maybe send me on a slippery slope away from my Krishna consciousness and practices. And so we want to be conscious about that. And doesn't mean to hide ourselves away, but it means to cultivate the practices, the consciousness we get from the disciplic succession, so that wherever we go, we're responsible that this is going to be win-win, uplifting consciousness for all. And then in that way, from wherever we're at, we are inspiring devotee association. We are the association, and others come towards their original consciousness too.
So when the Vedas say non-devotees, like what specifically how does that define? Like, I hear what you just said about what we bring to the table, and making choices and boundaries and all that stuff about where we spend our time. And but if everyone's a devotee, and then why does it use the word non-devotees so much? Like in reference to association, like.
Well, we need to look at some specific references to see what's meant. And at the same time, sure, from Prabhupada's vision, everyone's a devotee. From Krishna's vision, and they're completely 100% dedicated and capable to manifest that soul to shine in their devotion. At the same time, for us, where we're at, not in a judgmental way, but in a protective way, sometimes it's helpful for us to make distinctions. Like, yeah, maybe those who are spending the night drinking in the bar, they're spirit souls, they're devotees. Maybe the crack addicts down the street, yeah, they're devoted. At the same time, okay, so if I hang out with them, it's probably going to bring me down, and I probably don't have the potency to bring them up. So it's just like, practically speaking, I'll regard them as association that won't be helpful for me at this time in my devotional career. But of course, they're spirit souls, and just like I'm a spirit soul struggling with my stuff, they're a spirit soul struggling with their stuff, and all spirit souls are essentially pure diamonds, and different pure diamonds shining in devotion. That's our original nature, and we've allowed our diamonds to get covered. And so to uncover our diamond, to shine brightly, requires that we use our intelligence to make distinctions guided by Prabhupada about what association will support us.
Expanding on that, last night I was watching, or yesterday morning actually, I was watching a video of Prabhupada in the airport, and I watched it over and over again because I was just observing the people that were up on the balcony, and the pilots and the stewardesses and people that weren't in his entourage. And I was really like zooming in on looking like how they were perceiving all that activity as he would parade through the airport. And there would just be so much, kirtan and roses and all this stuff. And so I was just really looking at their faces and their body language and just like studying them. And so it was so intriguing that I watched it again last night, just like that magical energy that he sent out to everyone, that everyone just came and was attracted. And then it didn't matter what their walk in life was, whether they understood it, their face would just change and be interested, and he wasn't saying anything. He was just walking through the airport. And so that's kind of what's coming up for me when you're talking about, they weren't devotees and he wasn't preaching to them, but he was just carrying himself in a way that was attractive. That I bet many of them took a book home or asked some questions or did some more inquiry because of just experiencing his energy. Curious about what is that, association with strangers, being effective in association with strangers, just from how setting our mood and our tone and our how we carry ourselves, that tallness, so that when we walk into the grocery store or get into an Uber, that we're taking that with us. That's really important for me, like to really check myself. And sometimes I feel like I'm in a bubble or invisible going throughout life, and I forget that how many people are interacting with me, that I could be more effective in that opportunity with the non-devotee. Although I think I'm doing better than I ever have done before, but I still see so much room for improvement.
I share
Parampara.
this devotee association topic and devotee and non-devotee. It seems, I think you were saying this, and it seems that it's, and are we more likely to which way is the osmosis going? Are
Yeah.
we more likely to take on the association, or are we strong enough where we can give the association?
Yeah.
Because whenever we're strong enough where we feel confident that we can give association, then we can make less distinctions about devotee, non-devotee, and just because we know we're going to give devotee association, I guess in a humble spirit, but to the extent where we're more, we need to be more careful, maybe guarded or protected, if we know ourselves to be one who's more likely to be influenced by others' association, and we need to make more distinctions about devotees and non-devotees, and just like and then there's still, even if we feel confident that we can give devotee association, and we don't need to make as many distinctions about devotees and non-devotees, still we may make distinctions about how you interact with those people. Like you were giving an example, the card carrying, devotee versus the spiritualist or something but you're interacting with those, like those, a person who's interested in spirituality and personal growth, but they smoke pot and they drink beer and they eat meat or something.
Yeah.
You're interacting with them in a controlled environment, usually, so a class or a seminar or coaching or something like that. You're not going to go hang out with them on a Friday night or whatever like that.
But it doesn't mean I won't associate them. Maybe in a seminar, or they sign up for coaching within particular boundaries. Yeah.
Whereas I imagine that you'd feel more comfortable going with the card-carrying devotee, even though maybe they're not that inspiring.
Yeah.
You feel more comfortable to go on a Friday night to their house and take association.
Kirtan and philosophy.
Kirtan like that.
True.
So, and I know for myself that they're devotees by name only, but at least they're following vegetarian, they take prasadam and kirtan. Yeah. So I feel safer being my family, being around them. But then but I don't go too intimate into talks with them necessarily. But then there's like a Christian, somebody who smokes cigarettes and drinks beer and eats meat, and I feel much more inspired to go into an intimate conversation with them. Yeah. But I'm not going to go hang out with them on a Friday night like that.
Thanks for that prompt. Yeah, there's subtleties, there's complexities, and that's why we're encouraged to be aware about it. It's a real science of association. It's a real science of association, and there's different dimensions, different factors. Thanks for that. And hearing you speak, I'm reminded of the example. Like if there's a seedling, if there's a seedling, and then a squirrel or a rabbit is like really dangerous association. The seedling needs a fence. It needs a fence, protected, this or that. But as the seedling is nourished and fed and this and that, it's going to become a redwood, or it's going to become a banyan. And then the redwood doesn't need to worry about the squirrel or the rabbit. You can have 100 squirrels associating very closely, and it's a very symbiotic relationship. So, thank you.
Well, just because just imagine it's in that early stage, like the smaller seedling, and there's somebody who said, "Oh, this person is really into self-realization." You could be influenced and kind of taken away, like, "Oh, but they're chanting Hare Krishna and they're but they're doing ayahuasca, and let me go or smoking weed is support them. Supporting it. Let me go do that." You can be that's the subtleties there. It's
I saw that Bhakti George had his hand up. I think I saw that.
George, do you have a question?
I don't think so.
All right.
I put my hand up if that was what you...
Yeah, Gajendra.
Well, I don't think I'd forgive myself if I didn't say something based on the feeling that I'm having in this association right now that was brought up with Laksmipriya's class. I'm really appreciating the association of devotees tremendously. And I appreciated so many things that she said that were just full of life in how she was saying them. And one of the first things that what caught my attention is she was talking about faith. She mentioned faith. And in the context she had mentioned it, it was sort of contrasting it with inquisitiveness. And of course, I know she inquires frequently to better herself as a devotee, to go deeper into her service. She has that inquiry, but she hasn't had the kind of inquisitive, like questioning the reality of Krishna consciousness or Prabhupada or the choice that she's made in her life, the awakening she's had. And so I'm just really I guess I'm just wanting to express appreciation to Laksmipriya about her faith. And I just kind of looked at myself and realized I have something that's maybe called no doubt. Like I don't have any doubt about Krishna or Prabhupada. You're not going to cause me to doubt them. But I don't have the type of faith that leads to the kind of powerful action that I see in Laksmipriya and many of the other devotees with what they're doing and their willingness to put themselves out there and connect with people in Krishna consciousness and create the space. And so I'm kind of feeling appreciation, just to feel kind of humble myself and just kind of in awe of devotees.
Well, thank you for the compliments and thank you for speaking up about that, because it seems like I wasn't looking at faith and inquisitiveness like you are, but now that you're mentioning it, it makes a lot of sense. Like, and it feels gratifying to know that there is some inquisitiveness in me. It just doesn't look like the standard question asking, hand raising kind of thing. So that's comforting. And thank you for your appreciation in the sense that you're looking at your own path and practice. And the no doubt is like, when you said that, I'm like, wow, what is there anything in this world I have no doubt about? I think I have some doubt, but I have strong faith. And so that's a whole level of something that I need to enter into my what I'm processing with all of this speaking, shyness, lack of courage or whatever. Is the doubt. Like I didn't even consider that. So that's pretty heavy, but I'm really impressed and encouraged that you have none. So I'd like to talk to you more about that one day. And I, as you're speaking, I also sense that, like, I said something about this in the class, this whole association that we're so lucky to have, like, that we've created in this community, like, it is so powerful. And I think sometimes I take it for granted and I don't really nurture it or have gratitude for it. I do on the surface, and I think I say that a lot in general, but that deeper sense of gratitude of, yeah, I'm proud to be a devotee, but this kind of devotee in this group, and looking on the screen at all of you, and I know most of your inner workings and your sadness and your pain, and yet I rely on you for accountability and support, because we're real with each other, and we all are on the same path, and our paths look different, and that's acceptable in this community. That's acceptable. Because the goal is the same, the paths just look a little different. We're not robotic. We're a beautiful set of people that all have different paths and support each other 100%. Yeah, thank you. I just don't know how I got to be one of the lucky ones that landed landed here,
Well, I feel really so lucky that you did, because I'm just really feeling like man, that's my god sister. That is really, wow. It really inspires me to want to step up my game as far as being part of the Sangha, part of this family of Prabhupada.
I'll be accountable.
I'm really glad to have you as a god sister.
Thank you. It's been wonderful getting to know you. And like, I don't know any other group of people that I've been in or familiar with that, you know, we could end this class and I could literally call up Gajendra and say, okay, now you said you were going to do this and I'm coming over to check, or have a real honest heart-to-heart conversation that's not a facade of emptiness and just empty encouragement that doesn't really have any heart to it. So I guess we should thank David and Marie for that, for giving us this capability or bringing out these qualities in us. Yeah, thank you. Gratitude for that. Putting us together too, putting us all here on the screen together, this opportunity, and for encouraging me. I mean, if I don't know who knew me in the beginning, but like just me to be sitting here is just a miracle. So that came from a lot of encouragement in classes and associations. All right, are we ready to go? Bhagavad-gita ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you all. Thanks for your association.